less sour anyway. Either way, thanks for joining me. We are going to keep it brief this evening. I'll kind of get into that. But even if there was no other reason to keep it brief, daylight savings time, losing an hour of sleep, that gives us reason aplenty. So, like I said, we're going to only cover a few things this evening. But first of all, I'll give you a little bit of an update on kind of what's going on my end. Because depending on how you watch this and how you listen to this, this might be like the first time that we've seen each other, or that you've engaged with this for a couple of weeks. And so I kind of wanted to explain why that is and what's going on. So last Sunday I did my regular live stream, which I do on YouTube or on Facebook, and I kind of went through. I liked that. I don't like every show that I do, but I liked that one a decent amount because it kind of gave a window into kind of my ideological progression and my investigative progression, if that's the right way to word it. But just talked about, the things I'd been thinking about and the different stages of ideas I've been working through and questions I've been asking, and kind of where I was at now as a result of it. So I really liked how it went. So I did that, and then I talked about how I was going to do one on Wednesday as kind of a post Super Tuesday analysis, talking about the fallout and all those things. So I finished that up on Sunday, but then I couldn't get the video to download. Normally I do it, and then I download the video, and then I re-upload it to Facebook, and then like to Spotify and all the other stuff. My wife handles all those. I usually just do the Facebook or the YouTube, and then she'll do all the other platforms. But I couldn't get it to download. So I was trying to figure out why that was, and I contacted her the next day, and I'm like, can you try this on a computer? Because she was out of town. Her and my daughter, they were visiting in-laws, visiting family, and she couldn't get it to work. And so no matter what we did, we couldn't get it to work. So when Wednesday rolled around, which is when they got home, they were gone for about a week, two things became apparent. First of all, I didn't want to do another live stream where I wasn't going to be able to download it, and then subsequently I couldn't upload it to all the other platforms where I share this podcast or show or whatever. I didn't want to do that. Secondly, my wife and my 9-month-old had just gotten into town, and I was like, man, it's going to be really hard to do this show, with them in town. I was excited to see them and hang out with my daughter and everything. And so the concern of not being able to download it in the first place, was enough for me to go, okay, let's try and figure this out before doing another one, at least right now. So we spent this last week messing with it. We couldn't figure it out. So what we decided we're going to do is maybe for that last podcast, because I did like it. If I thought it sucked, I would have let it kind of languish in Facebook obscurity. But there's a few of them I'd be totally cool with that happening, but that wasn't one of them. So we might try to do some type of like video recording software where it records whatever's on the screen, and then we can use that to upload. I don't know. We're going to try and figure something out. But as of right now, what I'm going to do is, with this one, that's why I'm going to keep this brief, because I'm not going to go into a lot of the stuff I've been researching and working on, because I don't want to, for it to just languish in obscurity on Facebook. So if this won't download whenever I'm done, then that means I'm going to have to try something different. And what I'm going to do is just bite the bullet and order a webcam, and then I'll stream it live from YouTube, which will just kind of cut out that middleman in the first place. Because I can stream live from YouTube, but it has to be from the computer, and our computer is like a decade-old MacBook. So and the camera on it sucks. If you've watched any of my first podcasts or videos, like the grainy camera, I mean, I'm sure it was great back then, but it's a decade old, so the camera's horrible. And so I don't want to do that without like a nicer webcam. So I'll just order one of those if I can't get this to download afterwards, and then we'll probably just do our thing on Sunday, and I'll just kind of pick back up the stuff I was working on. So that's where that is. And the other part of it is, I could record videos and upload them like I did in the past, but I like to do this live, at least for now. I feel like it kind of keeps me on my toes. It keeps me from over-editing content. Like man, you got to respect the heck out of people that just make YouTube videos all the time, and they edit the crap out of it, and they do all the jump cuts and everything. Like, there's a lot of work that goes into that, and I do not want to have to go back to doing that. So that's kind of where that's at. What I will say is, just as an aside, like I said, my wife and daughter were out of town for a week, and it really is true what they say about how marriage kind of, civilizes a dude or domesticates us or whatever. Because while they were gone, I basically just either didn't eat dinner or I had like a banana, or I think I had chicken nuggets one night. And then the minute my wife, and I love to cook, by the way, I just didn't feel like it while they were gone. And whenever they got into town, my wife was like, would you go to the store and pick something up simple for dinner? And I took my daughter. It was cool. She like rode in the little front pouch thing, and it was fun. She was giggling the whole time. It was really fun. And while we were at the store, I saw this like loaf of like garlic Parmesan bread. So I'm like, I could do something with that. So I bought that and some other stuff, and I went home and cut up some chicken breast and cut up some zucchini and yellow squash and onion and garlic, and cooked all that with like this homemade like marinara sauce that I made, kind of pasta sauce, a bunch of spices and everything. And then I like reduced that down, and I took that loaf of bread and hollowed it out and put some Parmesan cheese and then some shredded cheese in it. And then I put that mixture in the middle of it and then put more Parmesan cheese and more shredded cheese, and then closed the loaf, like put the top back on it and baked it. And then whenever I cut it open, it was kind of like a big loaf of like kind of a chicken Parmesan kind of thing. But all that to say, I could have done anything like that when she was gone. In fact, I have more time to do those kinds of things when she's gone. And it's more inconvenient to do that when she's here because, there's the baby and all this other stuff. But it's like, no, I don't feel like doing that whenever my wife is gone. But whenever my wife's here, it's like, I actually have a reason to, make something nice like that. And it actually was super delicious, by the way. It was just an idea I had when I saw it in the store. But it was super good. Highly recommend it. So, the only couple things we're going to talk about is I want to tell you guys the story about being on Dave Rubin's member call-in show this past Tuesday. It was a super cool experience. It was a lot of fun. But I just wanted to share the story because I think it's funny. So, I really like Dave Rubin. The Rubin Report is a great show. Dave kind of experienced it seems like a similar kind of political evolution or an ideological evolution that I did around the same time. And so I kind of feel a little bit of a kinship because of that. But he did this thing for Super Tuesday where he was going to have a member call-in show from the Rubin Report community, which I'm a part of, and I write on there, I write for them regularly, post stuff all the time. And so he was going to do that, and kind of the process of that was, you send him an email, say what your question is, a little bit about you, and then they'll let you know if you're going to kind of be a part of it or not. And so they emailed me back, said, okay, make sure you're in a well-lit area and you have headphones, and they had all this criteria and everything. So I was like super excited for it. So first off, like I said, my wife and daughter were out of town, so I'm like, I can do this anywhere. Like, as you are well aware, I am basically an aspiring duct tape production. Like, I hope to one day be a duct tape production, on a shoestring budget. Right now, we are way below that. I got shower curtain behind me, right? Like I do this in my bathroom because it's the farthest removed from my 9-month-old's room, so you don't hear her crying or something if she's, upset. So, but they were gone, so I'm like, I can find a place to actually do this, people always do this stuff with like their bookshelves behind them, I could do that. So I went and set up in front of my bookshelf, lighting sucked. Set up in front of the fireplace, lighting sucked. So it did not matter where I set it up, the lighting was garbage. So finally, I'm like, I'm going to have to freaking do this in the bathroom, aren't I? Are you serious? Like, I'm really going to have to do this? So I'm like, that just is perfect. So that makes sense. So I go and get a table from the basement. It's like a camping table. Bring it up into the bathroom. And then so I don't know about you guys, but our vanity light has like 8 slots for light bulbs. And then the above light has several slots. Like, we don't keep all those slots filled with light bulbs. Like, that's way too much freaking light. I don't even know who designed that for this tiny bathroom. But they had said as much, it needs to be super well lit. So then I go around the house and I'm pulling light bulbs out of lamps to fill all these slots in the vanity and fill the above light. And then I'm fixing up the shower curtain. Seriously, it's kind of like in Joe Dirt when he's going through security. And they're he says his name is Joe Dierte. And don't try to church it up, son. You know your name's Joe Dirt. I'm literally trying to church up a shower curtain to be on Dave Rubin's thing. I'm oh my gosh, this is just so perfect. And then, of course, on top of that, to add an extra layer of irony, I'm getting my tie all fixed and, making sure I look nice and trimming my beard and everything. So, before the show started, it started at 7, my time anyway. there's a couple of people from the Rubin Report community that I Skype with pretty regularly, and one of them was also going to be part of that, that member show. And so him and I Skyped for like 30 minutes beforehand to make sure the setup was working, everything was right. At this point, I had to go and buy some headphones. I went and gotten headphones, made sure that worked out with the phone because my last pair of headphones I'd accidentally washed, which honestly I was kind of bummed. Like, they were a cheap pair of headphones, but I bought them in Tel Aviv, so I was like, oh man, my Tel Aviv headphones. So I had to go buy a new pair of headphones. And then I had my phone, because I didn't trust the computer to do Skype on this computer. It is so old, I do not trust it. I appreciate that I get to use it, but it's just not super reliable. And for something like that, I just trusted my phone better. So I had my phone set up like on the edge of my computer like this, to where it's like hanging over the edge so that my headphone jack could be coming down because I needed it to be sitting upright, leaning on the computer. And then I had it sitting, I like found a washcloth of my daughter's and draped it so that it actually was flush because of the way the headphone jack was interacting with the table. Like, it was the most janky ghetto setup. I mean, it was amazing, but it was perfectly appropriate for this. But me and this other dude Skype talked for like 30 minutes, kind of refined our questions a little bit. And then his show started and he was like, oh dude, they just added me on Skype. I'm like, awesome, man, go for it. I bet you're going to be first. Super cool. So he goes on, and it was super cool. He did a good job. He talked to Dave. Dave complimented his background, said it was very, it looked nice. It was a nice background. And I'm sitting there going, okay, I'm excited to talk about, like, yeah, that's a shower curtain. Okay, here's my question, kind of as an icebreaker. And so I have the thing with my phone going on, and I have his live stream going on YouTube on a tab, and then I have another tab where I'm kind of like refining my question, working it out. But I forgot about the delay between YouTube and, like real life of what's going on. So I have my phone here, and then all of a sudden it's like incoming call on Skype from the Rubin Report. And I was like, ugh! So I like press it, and, Dave's like, hey, are you there? Truman, you there? Like, and the video wasn't working. I'm like, are you serious? So, but because the phone is in such a delicate position, I can't really so I'm like tapping the video, like on and off, turn the camera on and off, trying to maneuver over to my question on that tab. So, and like, because I'm totally deer in the headlights now, because I'm distracted by, I didn't expect the call right then. The video is not freaking working, and I was just totally caught off guard. But it was cool. We had a cool conversation. I didn't feel like I articulated my question as good as I would have liked, but it was still, I felt like it went well. At the end, I scored some VIP tickets for his meet and greet when he comes through for his book tour, which would be pretty sweet. So I'm super excited for that. That was cool that they did that. I'm excited to, meet him. And afterwards, I took a picture of me just like, looking, I thought I looked pretty all right. And I tweeted it out. I'm like, of course, when you finally get to be on the Rubin Report, and then your video doesn't work. And Dave retweeted it, and it was cool. He said I would be queued up for like the next time they did that, I would be the first one on. So I guess that's more of an impetus to buy a webcam. But it was just so funny. I'm like, this is perfect. Like, of course, again, I aspire to be duct tape over here, churching up the shower curtain, making sure that looks perfect, and then I can't even get any visual. But regardless, it was a really cool experience. It was a lot of fun. And, and afterwards, the thing was done, because they never got any video, I freaking Skyped the other dude, the one who went on first, immediately, and I said, can you see me? Can you see me, man? He goes, and he's dying laughing. He's like, yeah, dude, it's working perfectly. Like, the video's fine. I'm like, of course. So, anyway, the whole thing was like, I went through this, frustration, but then just kind of like, of course, it's fine. But either way, it was a lot of fun. I'll put a link to that. The other guests, like all of them, there was 5 of us that were on. They all asked really good questions. I thought it was good conversation, and it was really cool that he did that. So I'll put a link to that. I think my part, was like, I think I talked to him for like 5 minutes or so. It was at like the 38-minute mark, but I'll put a link to that. Either way, cool experience. Okay, so here's the only other thing I'm going to talk about, but I think it is interesting, and I do think it's worth talking about, so a few days ago, there was this tweet that went around that had some really bad math on it about Michael Bloomberg's campaign and everything. So I'll let PolitiFact did a story on it. I'll quote that, and then we'll kind of get into the details. But I do think this is worth talking about. It's funny, it's stupid, but it is worth talking about because I think it might point to something a little bit deeper, that's worth mentioning. So, from PolitiFact, quote, bad math at MSNBC. Bloomberg's ad spending wasn't enough to give every American $1 million. MSNBC anchor Brian Williams aired a tweet during his TV show that said former New York City Mayor Mike Bloomberg, who self-funded his since-suspended presidential campaign, spent so much money on ads that he could have instead delivered every American a fortune. Bloomberg spent $500 million on ads, the tweet said. The population is 327 million. He could have given each American $1 million and still have enough money left over. I feel like a $1 million check would be life-changing for most people, yet he wasted all of it on ads and still lost. Williams read the tweet after it was introduced by Mara Gay, a member of the New York Times editorial board, who said that, quote, somebody tweeted recently that actually with the money Bloomberg spent, he could have given every American $1 million. It's an incredible way of putting, Williams said after displaying the tweet on screen. If that sounded too good to be true, it's because it is. A quick use of a calculator shows that 500 million divided by 327 million people is actually about $1.53 per person. And so the PolitiFact article goes on and shows like another tweet of that segment, just with the simple text, how did this end up on TV? Because that's a good question to ask. How does that end up on TV? $500 million is enough to give 500 people $1 million. That is a very, very egregious error in mathematics. And one could be forgiven if it was just like one person who was just like, yeah, wait, what, but there was a lot more that goes into it. So even though it's fun to make fun of them, even though it's fun to talk about how stupid they are or all this other stuff and poke fun and then just kind of her and move on, I think that question is worth asking. Literally, how did this end up on TV? So let's think about it from the standpoint of an actual process, okay? So first there's the tweet itself. The tweet was widely circulated on a lot of accounts, a lot of leftist accounts, including People for Bernie, which has like almost 250,000 subscribers on YouTube, so it's a huge account. Circulated all over Twitter, okay? So there's that. Not vetted, no issues, okay? Then it eventually made it to some people somewhere at two of the biggest news networks in the country, which is MSNBC and the New York Times editorial board, right? So that's Mara Gay, Brian Williams, other people there. So it makes it to them, right? No problems. The tweet was probably polled by a couple people before it was handed to them by social media. These companies, these places have people whose job is social media, and they pull things like that, find out what's trending, all that stuff. These people whose literal job is to engage with social media. So those people didn't see any issues with the tweet. They clearly didn't read any of the comments on the tweet, because the comments, at least last I saw it, people were like, that's not true, that doesn't work. All over, like, hey, this is why we get made fun of. No one read that. The social media people didn't read it. Okay, then it's given to some production people. You would imagine, like, there's some people actually at MSNBC whose job is to take this content, put it on this screen, have it ready, as part of this segment, whatever. The production people either didn't read it or didn't see any problems. And lastly, you have Brian Williams of MSNBC and Mara Gay of the New York Times editorial board discussing this tweet as if it was something profound. In fact, before he read it, Williams said that he had actually read it earlier in the evening and that it struck him as profound then. Like, in other words, he read 2 + 2 = potato, had time to marinate on it, and then read it again as if like, yeah. Can you believe 2 + 2 = potato? I can't believe it. Like, he never saw any issues. And then for her part, Mara Gay's response after he read it on air, she said, quote, it's an incredible way of putting it. It's true. It's disturbing. It does suggest what we're talking about here, which is that there's too much money in politics, and it makes it difficult. And the clip cuts off before they get to the next point, which is the issues with money in politics. So it's, it's true and it's disturbing, and here's what we're talking about, and we're very indignant as a result of this profound truth. But back to the original question, how did this end up on TV? Think about that process. This isn't just Mara Gay and Brian Williams. There is a lot of people whose hands this passed through, so to speak. There's a lot of cracks that this fell through before it made it on one of the largest news networks in the country. So how does that happen? Well, I'll tell you how it happens, or at least my theory on how it happens. I think it happens the same way some idiotic thing gets shared on Facebook that's patently false, right? That's false to any outside observer. It's because the person sharing it is more interested in the narrative that it supports rather than asking the question of whether or not it's true. And that's a problem. On Facebook, it's a problem, especially like I see stuff all the time. I saw one, I think it was just today or yesterday, someone posted something that wasn't true at all about Bernie Sanders getting arrested for throwing eggs at black people during the civil rights movement. And I was like, I said something like, look, I'm no fan of Bernie Sanders, but this is not true. Like, there's enough room to criticize without saying stuff that's not true. I see this stuff all the time on Facebook, whether it comes to immigration, Hillary Clinton, whatever. It's like people will just share crap because it supports the narrative that they want it to support and reinforces their feelings. And, on Facebook, most people can identify that. Some people can't, but whatever. That's just some derp thing on Facebook, right? There is a difference between that and MSNBC and the New York Times doing that. But it's the same reason. It's because there is a preference for narrative and having your bias supported that you are so interested in what it might support that you don't care if it's true. And maybe it's not even that you don't care, but that you don't think to ask the question, is it true? That you are so, tunnel visioned on narrative that the idea of, is it true or is it not true, doesn't even enter the equation. It's like, first glance, this checks out, cool, pass it on. First glance, this checks out, cool, pass it on, right? That's a problem. So my main point here is anyone at this point who does not think that there is a narrative preference and a narrative bias among our gatekeepers in the media, I don't even know what to say. Look at the attacks on Bernie. Look at how CNN handled that debate where Warren, God rest her soul, right? She's out of the race. Not the first time she had to leave a race, as I think Greg Gutfield tweeted out. It's absolutely hilarious. But she lobs this ridiculous accusation against Bernie. He denies it, and then the CNN moderator, Abby Phillip, acted like he didn't deny it. Like it was just self-evidently true. I saw a piece in, I think it was from NBC.com today, put out a piece that was about how Bernie supporters helped elect Trump, and are they going to do it again? And the whole piece was about what what Bernie should do, presumably when he doesn't get the nomination again, because his supporters cost Hillary the election. And this was put as an analysis, not an opinion piece, by NBC's chief White House reporter. There is a narrative preference, left, right, center, as if there's a center anymore, in the mainstream media. And that's fine as long as they're honest about it. But as long as they're maintaining that they are these, unbiased, no narrative preference whatsoever gatekeepers of truth, while they're sharing dirt memes on Facebook or whatever, and pretending like that's true, that's going to be a problem. So as this primary heats up, as much as it can heat up with a bunch of old dudes losing their minds, as this heats up, just something to be aware of, just something to think about. Again, there is a narrative agenda for MSNBC. There's a narrative agenda for Fox News. If you think that either of those statements is not true, you're kidding yourself. But it's not just them. CNN, NPR, all of them. So at least the ones who are honest about it, you can kind of, glean something there. But there's, Mara Gay, New York Times editorial board, Washington Post, of course, overt, blatant media narrative bias on the Washington Post. Democracy dies in darkness. Yeah, okay. So the point is just something to keep an eye on, something to think about is, whenever we see that tweet, Brian Williams and them talking about it, it's funny, and you ask a question like, how'd that end up on TV? But seriously, how did that end up on TV? Ask the question whenever you see headlines go, why is that there? Is this editorializing, or is this actually, fact? Most of it's going to be editorializing presented as fact. So just something to keep in mind. I think it's incredible the way that this, stuff gets put forth in media, and there are still people that think that the media is not biased, and that it's just some conspiracy thing. I hope that the left is waking up to it with the way they're treating Bernie, but I'm not sure that that's going to be the case. So anyway, so that's it for right now. To give you a little bit of just what I'm going to be talking about next time, because like I said, I don't want to go into all of it now and then not be able to download it. Kind of what I'm working on and what I talked about in my last live stream and why I want to upload it, because I thought it was at least somewhat informative, is where I'm asking the question, is Bernie Sanders, is he an aberration, or is he the logical conclusion? The way Dave Rubin put it actually on this last Tuesday, which is how I framed the question, was Dave said that socialism was kind of a virus that had infiltrated the Democratic Party through liberalism, but it was a virus, it was an aberration. And my question was, which parts? Which parts are a virus and which parts aren't? Because as best I can tell, there is a good argument to be made that Bernie Sanders is actually the logical conclusion and not some aberration virus that needs to be expelled. I'm not convinced that that's the case. So what I've been doing is working on that from a historical perspective, looking at the history of progressivism, things before the New Deal, since the New Deal, etc., reading some books about that. And then what I've started doing is also going through Joe Biden's policy positions and what he puts forth on his website, which I'll include a link to, and looking at, okay, are these policy proposals some return to something? He's supposed to be the, quote, moderate or centrist candidate, and is he that? Does he represent that? Or do they represent a continual shift in a certain direction that actually does point to Bernie Sanders? The way I worded it last week was, I think I said, they're counting by twos, he's counting by hundreds, but they're all counting in the same direction. So when Amy Klobuchar says, Bernie, you have to be able to show your receipts and show how you're going to pay for it, she's not attacking his plans from an ideological standpoint. She's just saying, well, you have to be able to pay for it. In other words, if you could pay for it, they'd be great. And so I'm not convinced that they're not all actually moving in the same direction. The pacing is just different. So I'm going through Biden's policies and everything he has on his website to look at, is he a return to something? Or is he actually still moving in that direction? He's just, the pacing's a little slower than what Bernie's putting forth. So that's what I'll talk about next time. If, after I get done with this, when I try to download it, if it doesn't download, then I'll go ahead and order the webcam and we'll be here, next Sunday, I would imagine. If it does download, then I'll probably try to do something earlier than that, just so I can kind of put some of that stuff out there. So we'll see how that goes. Either way, whatever this is the kind of thing you're into, please like, share, and subscribe. On YouTube, that's at Return to Reason. On Twitter, you can follow me on there. That's at My Mundane Mind. And then I'll also Return to Reason on like Spotify and all the other places wherever my wife uploads it to. I went through the list, I think it was last week, and I was like, I haven't heard of half of these, but cool if people are listening, very cool. And then I'll also include in the description the link to Dave's call-in show, where I was on there. I was on a 38-minute mark, but it's worth listening to the whole thing. It's only about an hour and a half. Everyone on there had cool ideas. It was cool conversations. And really, that's kind of what he's creating over at the Rubin Report on their website. And so it was fun and enjoyable all around. So that's where that is. I appreciate you guys watching, and I will check you next time. See ya.